Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Welcome back to Between the Sheets. We have another wonderful conversation for you today. We are going to talk about life and sex after 50. I have Karen Bigman here with me today, and she is a certified sex educator. She is a certified menopause coach. And she is on a mission to create a sex positivity and demystify sex health, reducing shame and encouraging sexual wellness for midlifers. So welcome, Karen. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely a topic that I love because I think so many of us get taught about, early in life, young adulthood, having kids, things like that. But man, when it comes to midlife, empty nesting, figuring out who we are, and not to mention all the hormonal changes and all these things that happen in midlife, I love that there's people like you that will help us focus on that.
Well, thank you. That's exactly why I'm here.
I love that. So what kind of helped you narrow into this age group?
Gosh, it's not narrow. No. There's several areas. The first is that there's a lot of stigma and shame around sex in general in our society, but particularly as we age. There's this myth that women get to a certain point and we're just no longer sexual, like are all washed up. We go through menopause, and men all have erectile issues and they just can pop a Viagra. It's so easy for them. So there's a lot of, kind of getting the conversations going and being able to talk about it. The other piece, which I'm focusing more, and I focused a lot on the female side of menopause in the beginning, and now I'm actually focusing on helping educate men more about it because they hopefully will play a role in their female partner's menopause as well. And then I also talk about dating and relationships. I've been single for a while, and there's a whole different, approach at this point in life and dealing with the physical issues that could be challenging. So those are the main areas of focus. Pick one, pick all. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely agree. I mean, I'm in a committed partnership now, but I'm in my 40s. I've been dating for a while. And so, yeah, it's very different dating, after marriage with kids, things like that, than it was when I was in my 20s. Definitely what I have noticed more than anything is that I am looking for different things than I looked for when I was younger. The financial stability, what are your goals for those kinds of things are so much more important. And I don't think I ever talked to anyone about, well, where do you want to retire or what do you want to do after retirement when I was younger? So it definitely is a big shift in that.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's, that has been quite interesting. I'm 62, and so I date mostly men in their late 50s, early 60s, and I'm actually, people sort of have frowned upon it, but I am so one of the first criteria besides, honesty and kindness is financial stability.
Yeah.
Because sadly, in this day and age, there's a lot of people who, whatever their reasons are, and sometimes it's a result of divorce, sometimes it's just bad planning, but it's really important. You don't want to be, what do we say, a nurse or a purse?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So what are some kind of things that people can do at this phase of life in dating to try and really kind of find someone more on the level that they're looking for?
The biggest piece of advice that you will probably hear from most dating experts and life coaches is work on yourself. I find the relationships that have not worked out for me, unfortunately, there have been a few too many, have been a combination of the person I was with really not having done any work, working through their issues,
Mhm.
and my own journey to try to really understand what it is that I need for me and how I can help myself and be my own best friend, and then find someone who complements that and really can support me in that. And one of the hardest lessons I think I learned in my marriage, I was married for 26 years by the time we got divorced, was I never felt like someone had my back. And I
Mm.
think that is, and not that he was a horrible person or anything like that, but I think we were young and we didn't really think about what
Mhm.
the needs would be beyond, kids. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to really feel like somebody is consistent and they show up when they say they're going to show up. That um, they don't make you feel that whole like anxiety of not knowing that you have to
Yeah.
change who you are. I had a wonderful therapist tell me, you're turning yourself into a pretzel for this person. Like we never want to be someone who we're not. You want to really be
Right.
able to be yourself, but also to know who you are, to be able to be that person and strong enough to say, no, you don't compliment me, you don't serve me, you're
Right.
not worthy of me. I'm worthy of somebody who treats me properly.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I had to learn was that it doesn't make that person a bad person or anything wrong with them at all. They're just not for me and the boundaries and the goals that I have. So if I want someone who's financially stable and you're not, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. Like you said, maybe they went through a bad time. Maybe they had, but I know for me, being financially stable is very important, and having a partner who is also financially stable is important. So I think learning those kinds of things, like you said, my hard stops was very important for me to figure out where I'm going to draw that line, and which lines are like, all right, there is some wiggle room here. And then on other ones, no, there's not. This is it. This is the hard stop.
Right, and I always joke he doesn't have to have a private plane, but he needs to be able to pay his bills, and
Yeah.
sadly, I was in a 5-year relationship, and my partner just was not good with money and never, planned properly and was sort of delusional about the opportunities that were out there, and I had to end it because I just saw that he needed more, and it wasn't. So I used to be a divorce coach before I got into this
Okay.
work. And the two conversations that I say are the hardest conversations to have are about money and about sex.
Hmm.
And they're often the conversations that nobody wants to have. And they
Yeah.
get more and more. The longer you go without talking about them, the harder they get to talk about.
Yes.
And so it's just, you can bury it under your head in the sand for so long, but at some point it's going to come out. That was that, the financial side. So I'm particularly sensitive about that, but I think we all should be, none of us
Yeah.
wants to be broken in our
Right.
later years. And in that's a real possibility, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, let's talk about that sex conversation, because I think you're right. It's difficult for people to have that conversation. And I always tell, my patients at work, or people that are listening on the podcast, I feel very strongly that if you can't openly talk about sex, your STI history, what your likes, your dislikes, a brief afterwards, like, hey, that didn't really work out that good, or I thought that was going to feel better than it did, or whatever. If you can't have those conversations, you really shouldn't be having sex with that person.
Absolutely love that. That's exactly what I preach. And I always, one of the myths I think that many of us have getting back into the bedroom at this point in life is that, well, she can't get pregnant anymore, so we don't need to worry. And
Yep.
so I am like a huge advocate of like that STI conversation has to be had early and
Yep.
often. And I
Yeah.
will say that in the last couple of years, I've met a few men, which I hadn't in my first like 8 years of dating, men who've had herpes, which
Mhm.
I've learned a lot about it, and really it's not a question of stigma, but that
Mhm.
conversation came up really quickly. It didn't wait
Yep.
till we got naked, and now I just say like nothing comes off below the belt until we both had our full STI panel.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, herpes is not part of standard STI testing. And in
Correct.
my generation, especially, it was very
Mhm.
common. And it's
Yep.
not a death sentence, but you want to protect yourself if you can. So that part is, and I think once you can have that, the rest of the conversation gets a little bit easier.
Mhm.
And I would hope today that people are open to that. And if they're not, like you said, like you don't want to get into bed with someone who doesn't want to talk about it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think at this point in life, and I know we're a couple generations, but we're still adults, not in our first adult relationship. I've had bad sex. I don't want to. I want to have that conversation with my partner and be like, this hasn't worked or that hasn't worked. Like, let's do this. Or, oh my God, I loved that. That was awesome. I don't bad sex anymore. I want to talk about it. I want to have that conversation and multiple conversations about it. And I want to explore and I want to do all these things. And I think that was something that 20-year-old Stephanie didn't know how to do or didn't realize the importance of that for a relationship.
What has been one of the most interesting and fascinating learnings I've had? So I started this. I have my podcast, Taboo to Truth: Life and Sex After 50. I started. I thought I focused very much on menopause, and I certified as a menopause coach. And then I came across the Sexual Health Alliance, where I ended up doing my certification as a sex educator. And as part of that, I learned about fluidity in relationships, fluidity in gender, fluidity in sexuality. And one of the things that communities that are not necessarily monogamous or straight or heterosexual, they have these conversations as part of the wooing, if you will. Like
Yeah,
as a heterosexual monogamous person, I meet a guy, like I know where we're going to end up.
right.
Most likely. So we don't ever talk about it. And I think that is like, if we could teach, even if we weren't teaching the proper body part names
Yeah,
and sex ed, if we can teach people how to ask the questions and have the conversations up front about like, what do you like? What is okay to try? And oh, by the way, if you don't like it, it's okay to stop. I mean, I've had
right.
moments where I've just been like, you are hurting me. Like, we need to stop. I am not enduring this.
Yes.
And some women especially are afraid, and men don't know necessarily. They think you're enjoying it. We're faking, we're like
Yep.
waiting for it to be over. And that should never, ever be what you're experiencing.
Right. Absolutely. And there's a lot, especially in midlife with women. And all of a sudden, something does hurt that didn't hurt before because our hormones are changing and there's vaginal dryness that wasn't there before. And maybe you didn't realize you were going to be dry. And so you don't have lube handy or whatever. So, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think having those ongoing conversations are just so imperative.
And the comfort level with the person. But I was with a partner that I have, and I literally, like, we were really into it, and all of a sudden I was just like burning, and I didn't know where the lube was, and I'm just like, oh my god, like it did ruin the moment.
Yeah.
But it was just so uncomfortable and he felt terrible. And so I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
next time we got to have the lube on every side of the bed so we know if that
Yes.
moment is coming, we're going to have the lube
Right.
ready. And it's just like lube and vibrators and, pillows
Mhm.
and things that are all just part of what we have in the bedroom. And
Yeah.
and it is, sex can be messy and
Mhm.
weird, but it's also what makes it kind of more fun. If you just go
Yes.
and do the same thing and it gets boring.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think having the conversations about, fantasies or things that you might want to try and whether or not you actually end up trying them or, not, I think it's still a fun adventure to have those conversations. And maybe you will spark something that's like, yeah, let's try that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I joke. So I personally, I'm a dirty talker. I like a little dirty talk, but often the men in my generation can't hear very well. So I call it dirty yelling.
Yes. Right. I love it. Yes. Yes. That's great. It's so true. It's so true. So I know one of the things that, you started as more of on the menopause side and with women, and then you kind of transitioned into more of working with some of the men. So let's kind of work through that. What are some of the things that you can really help the women with? And then we'll move on to the men. So this perimenopause, menopause phase of life, what's going on with women that we can really kind of help them with going in that phase?
First of all, every woman is going to go through menopause. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
every woman is going to suffer terribly. Some women have debilitating symptoms. Some women have very few symptoms, but they all, even my friends that have not had any kind of the obvious symptoms like hot flashes and things like that, end up with vaginal dryness later in
Mhm.
life. So we will all need something. The most important thing to know is that, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. Most
Mhm.
likely there's nothing wrong with you. And number two, that there are solutions to help. And I think
Mhm.
for many, many years there was this misinterpretation of a study that led to the belief that hormone replacement therapy caused cancer, which they now know
Yes.
it's very, very different interpretation. I just
Yeah.
actually just came from the ISWISH conference, which is the
Awesome.
International Society of Women's
S-
Sexual Health, something
Women's
like
sexual health.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the last 2 years, there's been enormous conversations around testosterone,
Mhm.
which is really helpful for libido and for orgasms, and I suffered from anorgasmia, which was the
Okay.
difficulty in having an orgasm, so how important all these hormones are. So, really, that women need to and their male partners too, need to really educate themselves on how they can help, that even though you might not feel it, and you
Mhm.
might not think you want it anymore, it should be it's a healthy part of our human existence, not
Yeah.
necessarily just sex with a partner, but self-pleasure as well. And so
Mhm.
figuring out how to continue that however it looks for you, whether it is with a partner, without a partner, with a different kind of
Mhm.
partner and a different kind of play. I try to like open women's minds to it, and to also this one really kills me. My best friend taught about hormone replacement therapy,
Mhm.
but she was talking to me and I said, okay, you got to get the topical vaginal estrogen, because at least
Yes.
it took her, first of all, she couldn't get a doctor's appointment, but I think it took her like a year and a half to 2 years to finally get the prescription. There is this feeling that we must suffer, that women are, I'm
Mhm.
just gonna like, run through this and I'm gonna get through it and I'm gonna get over it. You're not. Like, you are actually doing yourself a disservice by
Yes.
not helping yourself with, getting the proper medical treatment, because they now know that osteoporosis it can be
Mhm.
prevented through hormone therapy. There are cardiovascular implications to not taking care of very bad night sweats. And there are also new medications that can help with libido. I mean, that was,
Yeah.
there are these two medications they were talking a lot about at the conference, Vyleesi and Addyi, which
Mhm.
are, like, if you're not feeling it, apparently you like this one of them, you inject yourself and like within a few hours, you're like, let's go, baby,
Yeah.
So there's so many things we can do for it. And so just not to give up, and to advocate for yourself. You don't need to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I specialize in is bioidentical hormone replacement, and I'm a huge proponent of it. It's cognitive prevention. We can prevent Alzheimer's. And if you do end up with Alzheimer's, you get a lesser form of it because you kept up with your estrogen through life. We can help with the vaginal symptoms. We can help with the hot flashes. We can protect your muscles and your bones and all of these wonderful things that, yes, unfortunately, back in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative said, stop everything.
Right.
Hormones cause cancer. It's a terrible thing. Well, it was only terrible in the synthetic hormones that they were using in specific populations and things like that. The study was misinterpreted. And thankfully, even the researchers that performed that study have come out and said that. So it's really, really good. But I love what you're saying. We shouldn't have to suffer. And women should not wait until you're completely through menopause to start getting those hormones. One of the things I like to tell my ladies, it's a hell of a lot easier to maintain than it is to get back. So if you're starting these symptoms and you're starting to have the hot flashes, you're starting to have vaginal dryness, let's get you on your hormones now before you're really like down the road. And now we've got to try and work our way back. Your poor friend that had to wait a year and a half to 2 years, I'm sure it took her months on that vaginal estrogen before she really started to feel the effects. Whereas if she had gotten it earlier, might have been a couple of weeks, or maybe she really didn't notice big changes at all. And so I think, we're doing better. Still have a ways to go. We have a
Right.
lot of education of providers to go yet, but I'm right there with you. Get those side effects treated, get your hormones balanced, and your life is going to be a lot more comfortable and enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that my gynecologist was, I asked her actually when I started doing this work, she put me on hormones as soon as I started
Mhm.
having hot flashes, which was actually in my late 40s or maybe even
Mhm.
earlier. And she goes, "Well, I read the research and I realized like it didn't make sense." And so
Yeah.
I never knew when I actually went through menopause. I mean, I'm still on my hormones and I'm
Yeah.
very content to be on all of them. But yeah, it's my girlfriend that I'm talking about, the one with the vaginal estrogen, she has osteopenia.
Mm.
So,
Yep.
which is a precursor to osteoporosis for those
Yep.
people that don't know what that is. But, she's at risk of falling and breaking a bone, and she's 62 years old. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really young, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, and it's interesting. You brought up testosterone, and that's really important for women. It's not just our sex drive, it's our motivation, period. It's our bone strength, our vascular system. There are so many things that the biggest area in the body for testosterone receptors is actually our heart. There's more testosterone receptors in our heart than anywhere else in our body. So it does more. These poor hormones got labeled as sex hormones, and they do so much more than sex. And so, yeah, it's super important. It's not just the estrogen and progesterone that women need. We need testosterone too, in a way less form than men do. We don't need nearly the amount that men do, but men also need estrogen just
That's
like we
right.
do. They make some. So, it's definitely kind of trying to pull back that view of testosterone is a male hormone, estrogen's a female hormone, and there's all this separation when there's not. There's differences, but we all need all of the hormones.
In fact, women, as I understand it, and I am not a clinician, so you know more than me, but have more testosterone in their 20s than men. It just gets converted to estrogen.
Yes.
So I also, so my issue with anorgasmia, that I was right post, I was separated from my husband and on the way to divorce, and I met a guy and we were having all this great sex and I was having trouble having an orgasm, and I, was convinced the universe was punishing me, but eventually I
Yeah.
found my way to this sexual medicine practice, and they prescribed me testosterone, and it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It really is. They also taught me
Yeah.
about vibrators, which was kind of a fun story.
Yes. It's so amazing to me how many women don't know how to please themselves, have never thought about it, are too ashamed to do it. And I'm like, but if you don't know what works for you, how is your partner supposed to know what works
Exactly.
for you? Get that vibrator out, the fingers, the whatevers, and figure it out.
Yep, yep, a mirror, have a date with yourself, put on some
Yes.
music and candles, and
Yes.
yeah.
And I love the mirror too. Yes. Look at it. There are plenty. I had a woman not too long ago. I practice urology, and we were trying to teach her how to catheterize herself because she was having some bladder issues and things and
Wow.
she wasn't emptying well. And we went to show her how to do it, and she was putting it in her vagina because she thought everything came out the same hole. And she was in her 70s. And I was just like, man, like, I don't even want to know what kind of sex you've had throughout your life because it obviously has not been good if you don't even know where everything is and what that does down there. So, yes, take a mirror, look at it, appreciate it. It's beautiful. We all have different looking vulvas. There is no right or wrong vulva. And know what your clit is, what your urethra is, what your vagina is. And then if you do have something like a prolapse, all of a sudden you're going to be like, whoa, that's not normal. Let me go get checked out because you know what your normal is.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I've also learned, you probably know more about this than me, that after I think it's 65, they're no longer requiring an internal exam for women or a
Yeah.
vulvar. And my gynecologist was telling me that she just diagnosed or found someone's vulvar cancer in their 70s by doing an
Wow.
exam. So don't
Yeah.
don't listen to that new, like, get yourself checked annually,
Yes.
regardless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just because we don't necessarily need a pap smear anymore because cervical cancer tends to be a younger woman's cancer, doesn't mean somebody shouldn't look at you down there to make sure everything's okay. You can also get melanoma in that area. I mean, you can
Yeah.
get so many things. Low testosterone, you can get lichen sclerosis all over your vulva, which is very irritative and itchy and can cause a lot of pain during sex. And that's a huge signal to us as providers to say, hey, your hormones are not quite right here. So, yeah, it's really important to look at it yourself and also to have a professional look at it from time to time.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
agree. So, let's kind of flip over to the men's side then. So, you've gotten into helping them more. And you're right. It's more than just pop a Viagra because number one, not everybody can take Viagra. Number two, it doesn't work for everybody. So, what are you helping the guys with and what kind of directions are you sending them in?
So one of the main things I've learned, and they talked about this at the conference too, is that your penis health or erections are a sign of your overall health, because the arteries to the penis, you're the urologist in the room,
Yeah.
are the smallest ones and the first to clog. So if
Yep.
you have erectile dysfunction, first thing you want to do is make sure that you don't have diabetes or cardiovascular issues.
Yep.
So it's not just that you can't get it up anymore. This could be a sign of something else. So being able, again, it's the shame thing. I dated a guy once, and first time we kind of got naked, he says, sometimes it doesn't work, and I'm like, oh, you came to the right woman.
Yeah.
We're gonna figure this out, and if it doesn't work,
Right.
we'll find a way around it.
Yes.
So learning that it's not does not have to always be about penetration, and teaching men that, as Esther Perel says, sex begins at the end of the last orgasm, that it can be
Yeah.
part of a much bigger picture rather than just intercourse. So really helping with that. And I've learned, which is kind of interesting, that I'm always bitching. Like, I love the dating apps, I love meeting men, but the texting strands, that it's like they don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that it's not that men don't want it to go anywhere. It's that they have not been taught how to communicate that way.
Mhm.
They don't know how.
Yeah.
And that sometimes it's incumbent upon women to teach them, not obviously in a
Mhm.
condescending way and not in an angry way, but
Sure.
how to talk to women, how to talk to your female partner, how to, like, hey, you seem crazy is not a good way to tell your wife, she's having hormonal I mean, my parents used to say to me whenever I was in a bad mood, "Do you have your period?" It's like, there's nothing worse you can say to a woman is, "Are you in menopause?"
Right.
"Yes,
You know,
I
it's
am."
so funny. One of my friends, she is going through perimenopause and menopause, and she gets pellets, which is not my favorite form of hormone replacement, but it does work really well for some people. And her husband will say to her, "Hey, is it time for your appointment?" Because he can tell when it starts to wear off and she becomes a bitch again. Like, please don't say that to me. Like,
Yes.
just,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know when my
yeah.
appointment is.
Just check her calendar. You don't need to have.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, we both need to learn how to talk to each other and to give grace because
Yes.
it is, especially perimenopause. It's in a very erratic time, and men, their as I understand it, their testosterone tends to decline on a more
Yeah.
gradual basis. Where for us, it's
Mhm.
like it's up one day, there's nothing left the next day, and we're
Right.
we're going through this roller coaster, and
Yeah.
can go on for many for like 10 years, which is
Yeah.
I've heard some pretty horrible stories. So it's teaching that. And then, like hear a lot of older men only like younger women. Well, I've dated a lot of men around my age. Like there are a lot of men out there that are interested in women that are middle aged
Mhm.
too. Yes, we would all love to have, I'd love a younger man too, but he's not in front of me. So
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to explore what works for you and what, at each phase of life, especially if you're dating and things like that. So I don't think there's anything right or wrong about that. But I do think you're right. When I've been dating, I've had older men that have wanted to date younger. I've had younger men who've wanted to date older, and I've had men my own age. And I think that you have to try and see what you like and what you don't like. And I don't necessarily sit there and think that age is just a number because I think it's more about how you live your life. I want someone who's active. I want someone who can keep up with me emotionally, mentally, physically, all of those things. Whether you can do that being my age or 5 years younger, 5 years older, 10 years, whatever it is, I don't think that that really matters as much as like, are you on the same phase of life, path of life? Like, can you function together?
yeah, and are you curious? Like, I'm a lifelong learner. If I meet somebody
Mhm.
who's retired and all they do is play golf and watch sports and they have no other interests, like, that's not for me. It doesn't like
Right.
I need somebody interesting. But I did coin the term when I turned 60. It was hard for me to get there, and I hadn't started this work yet, and I was single, and I really had a bit of a hard time when I finally got past the birthday. I decided that 60 is the new 60. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's the new 40." I'm like, no, this is what 60 is like today. It's not
Yeah.
this your mother or your grandmother's 60. Like we are young
Right.
and vibrant. In fact, menopausal women have studies show we're having the best sex of our lives.
Yep.
We have this whole like I don't give a fuck attitude
Yeah.
that starts to emerge partly hormonally as a result of some of the hormone
Yep.
changes too. It's really it's a wonderful time, and I think a good male partner appreciates that in you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you were saying earlier about men and, the erection being such a light into their overall health, it's very true. If I have a younger guy coming in and it's not because of a porn addiction or something like that, one of the first things I do is send them to a cardiologist. Let's make sure that you don't have other major issues going on because I can fix your dick for you, but I can't fix your heart. And if we don't fix your heart, who cares if your dick works? Because you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to functionally have sex and things like that. So I think that's really important. And there are diet and lifestyle things that guys can do to improve that. We know that. We know they can eat better, they can lose some weight, get their blood sugars and their blood pressures under control, things like that. But there are times where they do need the medicines. I don't like that there's shame involved in that. I think that you should be able to say, you know what? Hey, this is feeling really good. I'm excited to be with you, but I need a little help. And so it's going to be about an hour before this thing kicks in and we can really get at it. But we can still make out until then. We can still do this until then, or let's snuggle and watch this movie while the medicine kicks in and then we'll get back at it. I hate that there's so much shame around that for guys because there's no shame in my game when I need lube.
Yeah, yeah, and oh, by the way, one of the things that is hopefully going to get FDA approval soon. I don't know if you heard about this. Is sildenafil for women topical,
Yeah.
which so we're going to have our own Viagra, which will be
Yeah.
kind of cool too.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do see that men. In fact, it's almost I've seen in the opposite where they'll just get the prescriptions without having the medical workup, which can
Yep.
also be dangerous. So they're
Very.
and so they may not tell you they're taking it, and if
Mhm.
of course, I guess it's also biopsychosocial, so it's also emotional, so even if you take the
Correct.
pill and you don't things aren't going right in your head. It's
Yeah.
not gonna work.
Yeah. I'll have guys who Cialis works and works and works, and then they'll come in and be like, Steph, the last 6 weeks it hasn't worked. Well, what happened 7 weeks ago? Oh, well, I lost my job or my mom died
Right.
or whatever. That's what's happening right now. It's not that the Cialis all of a sudden isn't working for you. It's that y'all's head to head connection, your head to your wiener head, is
Yes.
very, very strong. And if anything in your bigger head is not working correctly or distracted or whatever, your little head isn't going to work. It just
Yeah.
isn't. It's just like when we're distracted or thinking about the grocery list, we're not going to achieve an orgasm.
Yep.
It's just not as noticeable because our body part doesn't have to get aroused to be able to perform. We can perform without fully arousal. It's not fun. I don't want to do that, but we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also just that idea that penetration is the name of the game. That's the outcome. Like
Right.
we're all gonna head there and then he's gonna ejaculate and it's all
Yeah.
over. And just understanding like I've learned, there's all sorts of there's sensation play and there's tantric
Yeah.
sex and there's this whole mind body connection. And it can be really, really beautiful and amazing and hot and
Yeah.
orgasmic, even if it doesn't include penetration.
Absolutely. And, I like to bring that up too because not all guys are candidates for Viagra or Cialis. And there are other things that we could get into in another conversation about what to go to next for erections, but there are guys who can't tolerate that. And so then penetration's now off the table unless you're going to wear a strap on or some an enhancement. And so you do get to explore those other things. And I think that's fun. I think it's fun to explore other ways of bringing you and your partner pleasure and excitement. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's very much about helping reduce the stigma about whether it's, anal play for men that are, oh my God, that means I'm gay, learning
Yeah.
about how that could be a lot of fun regardless
Yeah.
and different, different approaches or whether it's a little kink. Kink does not have to mean you're going
Mhm.
into a dungeon and strapping on, getting up on one of those St. James crosses. It can be
Right.
subtle. And still be a lot of fun. So really encouraging exploration and curiosity and openness and just having the conversations. Don't just do it and expect that she's going to like it or he's going to like it. Talk
Yeah.
about it and it will be amazing for both of you.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that I have found, and tell me if you see this in the guys that you work with, is the unexpected, I think, which is weird because I expect it to happen to the guys, but not everybody understands that, is the prolonged refractory period. The older they get, the longer that refractory period is. So you achieve your orgasm before you can get your next erection. There's this refractory period. And when you're in your 20s, man, that's like 20 seconds. And you're just like racking out another erection and you're ready to go. But the older you get, the longer that can go. And I have had guys come into me in the urology clinic just for that one question. Why can't I go a second time anymore? I used to be able to. Now it's 6, 8 hours, 12 hours later, maybe a day or two. And it's truly a natural phenomenon that happens. And it's our hormone changes and it's all of these things. Do you have guys that come in talking to you about that?
Honestly, no.
No?
No, that's not. I mean, I've had partners that actually have had, interestingly, a couple of partners where they have trouble ejaculating. That
Yeah.
they can't ejaculate, and I do believe my ex boyfriend and my other partner it has to do with religious shame as well. Like I think
Mm,
there's a lot of that. So I've seen
yep.
that, and I've seen erectile dysfunction, but I haven't seen. In fact, you remind me, my ex boyfriend was like he was an anomaly. Come 3 times within an hour. Like I was the one that was
Wow.
saying like, all right, you do you, because I'm done.
Right, right. Time out, time out. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Yeah,
but I
that's
would
funny.
imagine it, look, it happens to all of us. Like our
It
bodies
does.
age, love it or hate it, our bodies
Yep.
age.
Yeah, and you brought up too, the
Delayed
it's just
ejaculation.
yes, thank you. The delayed ejaculation, which is definitely an issue. I see it more in my older guys. And by older, I just mean above 50. You're not old in my book till you're like 85. So my older guys, I see it more in them than guys in their 20s and 30s, but it happens even then. But it can be medications, it can be hormones, it can be lifestyle, it can be, again, head to head connection. What's going on up there that's not allowing you to get there? Do you have things that you talk to your clients about to kind of help them work with that?
It's facing that, dealing with that. I mean, I'm not a therapist, so I can't, but I would definitely direct somebody who's having those issues to start to really focus on it. I think that's another thing that I really try. Men are so afraid of being vulnerable. They're so afraid of
Mhm.
about it. I mean, if I meet a guy on a date that has not done any internal work, I move on because it
Hmm.
is so important and their life will get better. So the thing that
Yeah.
I do counsel is like whether it's me or working with a men's group or a men's coach or a therapist or a sex therapist,
Hmm.
whoever, however it is, we've all got stuff and it's a component of it. And if it is not a physical issue, it often has to do with the way you script that you were taught. It's supposed to
Yeah.
work this way. It's often, guys that are I've dated that are very Catholic and are now divorced. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of guilt around that, and that
Yep.
now I'm sleeping with someone else. This is shameful, and even though they want it, there's something in there that's saying there's something
Right.
wrong here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I encourage that, do the work, learn to talk about it, and you'll get more women.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's amazing is you talk about all this variety in, what is happening to men. There are counselors and therapists for every type of thing. So there are people who help you overcome the purity culture. There are people who will work with you just on, mindfulness and being in the moment and those kinds of things. There are literally people who will help you with every single aspect. So, whatever it is that is getting in the way of your true enjoyment, I agree. Do the work. Find the person that's going to help you. And if the first therapist, coach, whomever doesn't work for you, you don't jive well, it's not a good vibe for you, go to the next one.
Yeah.
Don't just stop and give up. I think it's so important. I've had many therapists over the years, and not every single one has been the right fit for me. And I move on until I get that right fit
Yeah.
for whatever that season of my life is.
Yeah, I think it's very hard. I remember the first time I went to therapy, it was someone who I'd been doing a mother's group with when my kids were little, and I've since moved and had various people, but it's kind of hard. You're like, wait, this person doesn't connect with me, but they're the therapist, so they should know. But like any relationship, it doesn't always work. So I think that's really important. The other type of therapy, if you will, that I learned about is surrogate therapy, which is
Mm,
kind of interesting. So I guess licensed clinical therapists are not allowed to touch their patients, but a
yep.
surrogate, and I'm not talking about, someone who's a sex worker in the terms of
Hmm.
like having sex with you, but can really help if you have issues, help you be able, if you've suffered sexual trauma
Hmm.
and just trying to be able to get back to being intimate with someone. I've talked to cuddlists, I've talked to
Yeah.
surrogate partners who actually will help you get naked and be comfortable.
Hmm.
And they've told me, like, sometimes it's just being able to hold someone's hand, that somebody is so
Yeah.
traumatized by physical touch that then they want to be sexual again, that is just the starting point at getting back into it. So I do,
Yeah.
absolutely, there's so many types of therapies and modalities that can really help you both deal with difficulties and really enjoy new and
Yeah.
different ways of having intimacy.
Yeah. That's amazing. So tell me and tell all of our listeners, how can people find you? How can they work with you? You have a podcast. I want to hear it all. Tell me how they can get in touch with you.
So my podcast is Taboo to Truth: Life and Sex After 50, and it's available on all the podcast platforms. I also have it on YouTube. It's Taboo to Truth at Taboo to Truth Podcast. My website is Taboo to Truth, hence the theme. It's all taboototruth.com. And I'll be releasing, hopefully by the end of the month, probably worst case, early March, I'm going to be releasing a course for men meet menopause to help support your female partners. I have another course, an online course that is an adult sex education comprehensive, physical, the body, the menopause, andropause, and then some fun stuff, things you can do with or without your partners, communication prompts, things like that. So I'm really trying to put the tools out there, and they're $27. They're really not a big investment. And I have now launched a couple weeks ago on my Substack, which I'm not terribly active, but I do have a paid subscriber option for Ask Me Anything. So if you want to pay the $5 a month or $10 a month, I can't remember, one of those, you can ask me anything, personally through the Substack. So I'm trying to be out there as much as I can. Yeah, it's been, I love what I do. It's really a labor of love. It's really so important that your sex span and your lifespan should
Yeah.
be equal. We are
Yeah.
sexual beings, and the world would be a better place if we all just had more good sex.
Right? More orgasms equals world peace.
There you go. There you go.
Now we have a platform for when we are in Miss America.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah, except they'll censor us.
Right, right. We'll be off. Well, thank you so much for being here, Karen. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you. Everybody listening, if you have hormone issues that you want and you're in the state of Maryland, look up reviveish.com and I would love to work with you. You'll catch new episodes of Between the Sheets every Wednesday, hump day, obviously. And I really appreciate you being here. Go have some fun between the sheets.
Thank you. It was great being here.
Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.